Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit Quickie from the subreddit HFY, called One Man's Trash, written by Legal. The link to the original will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Xavier Tetch glanced sideways at the others in the crew. Those that were left, that is, 5 of them, himself included. The 4-armed Gasson Tala looking deadly and hot, as always, with the daggers. Nakros shifted his massive stone arms ready for another booby-trapped or a crystalline guardian to appear. Jurek was still fiddling with a rebreather, trying to get the appropriate mixture for the atmosphere on the moon. And of course, the Professor. The only other human was in front of the sarcophagus, trying to disarm and lock and get it open. They lost 6 to the traps and the guardians in the ancient Sophic tomb, but the treasure the Professor had told them about was just too good to pass up. Overall, Xavier had been prepared for the others to try and stab him in the back or shove him off the ledge, since humans were still the new kids on the block, galactically speaking. So, most of them didn't fully appreciate the resourcefulness that he brought to the table. But truthfully, everyone had been spending too much time surviving to worry about betraying everyone. Until now. His hand slowly moved to his side, slipping under the back of his hem with his jacket as he looked at the Xenos on either side. Jurek and Nak first to the right, and Tula to the left after them. There was a very loud click as the Professor did something, and the stone top of the sarcophagus began to creak back. "Got it!" he exclaimed, just as Xavier's fingers closed around the handles of Athena and Aphrodite. He yanked them free, pulling the triggers even as he leveled them out. The Xeno started to turn as he hit Nak in the side of the head several times, blasting rock-like chunks out before the Xeno flew back. Jurek was screeching for her personal shield generator, but she never made it as the bullet slammed into her, peppering her body and letting gases escape from her pressurized suit. Tula, though, was quick as she turned, spinning her daggers at Xavier has realized his mistake in shooting her last. Just as he twisted and leaned back, she was already too close, a pair of daggers slicing off of his left hand and sending Athena flying off as he screamed out. Another dagger lashed out across his face, but then he had Aphrodite pressed against her chest as he held down the trigger, knocking the Xeno back as purple blood spewed from the wounds and spattered across him and the ground. "Feck!" Xavier screamed, dropping Aphrodite and clutching to the bleeding stump. He looked at the Professor, who was ducking down, hands over his head. Professor! Xavier growled out until the man hesitatingly pulled his hands back and looked around. "Come in, they're dead. The treasure is just for you and me now. Get the surge kit over here, though." The Professor moved quickly, pulling out the military-grade surgery kit, holding it up for Xavier's bleeding stump. The device quickly slapped the biogel on the stump and then sealed the wound before dumping morphine into Xavier's bloodstream. He'd deal with the right eye later. The cut had sealed it shut with the blood, and he was only looking out for the left eye for now. "Oh, that's the stuff," he gasped as the drugs did their work and the pain completely vanished. "Well, why did you kill them?" the Professor finally asked. "Because this way it's just a 50-50 split. They'd have betrayed us once we got out of here, you know. What's in there?" Xavier's mind was already focused on the gold and gems and ancient alien artifacts. The Professor walked over and reached in and pulled out a stone tablet. He began to read it as Xavier stood back up, grabbing Aphrodite and walking over and looking inside. "The frick? It's just a shriveled old corpse," he gasped out as he saw what was inside of the stone sarcophagus. This tablet says, but now that you've pressed the tests of poetry, enlightenment, and wisdom, you will see that the greatest treasure is not riches or wealth, but peace and serenity. The ability to find tranquility in the universe and appreciate the riches of life and nature." Xavier looked over at the Professor, open mouthed. "What?" "That's what it says," the Professor hefted the tablet. The traps the Guardians were supposed to have been defeated with poetry and stuff, I guess, not explosives and weapons." They stood there for a quiet moment before Xavier lifted his right arm and shot the Professor through the chest, shaking his head as the Professor dropped down dead. "Jesus Christ, frick, these ancient ruins and stuff," Xavier muttered as he walked over to pick up his left hand that Athena still had in its grip. He tucked out the hand and the gun into his pack and began walking out of the tomb. Xavier, blood-eyed Tetch, sucked in breath as Saul sealed up the hole in his shin with a bone plug, his cybernetic eye remaining open as he squeezed his left eye shut reflexively from the pain. These Lactus fought damn hard to protect whatever it was in the vault. This had to be worth it. After hearing about the secret vault of the Lack at Homeworld, he had assembled a crack team of thieves, mercs, and pirates to raid the facility. He was down to just 6 men, not including himself, but there were just the vault itself. Nassif was cracking the code now, while the others guarded the Lackat aristocrats that captured and Saul's work to patch him up. "Your friends, vile ruffians," one of them was growling at Xavier, but he ignored the Xeno. "Heard it before," he muttered with a sigh. Instead, he focused on a few left of his crew. "Remember, we all get an even split. If I don't make it out of here, then you don't get the antidote. I won't have any of this betraying the others. There's going to be more than enough to go around. Look at the size of the vault, not to mention the security we killed on the way in. I still can't believe you poisoned us." The simmering ember-headed Xeno Kija growled. Truth was he hadn't actually poisoned them, and he just told him that he had. "I've been on too many treasure hunts to know how tempting it is. I want as many of us walking out of this one as possible," Xavier promised. "Speaking of, you're good," Saul said before helping Xavier back up to his feet. His metallic fingers squeezed the handle of Athena as he nodded and turned to the vault. There was a very promising click. Then the massive metal door began to open and swing out. Xavier grinned wide, prepared for golds and gems and ancient alien artifacts. But nothing inside was gleaming. He frowned and stepped forward, walking into the vault as Nassif was packing up his gear. Looking around the vault, he found a small case at the back, and that's it. Opening up the case, he saw a small hydroponic setup for a small plant or tree or something, and a pair of old envelopes with wax seals. "What the frick is this?" he asked, grabbing the envelopes with his right hand, feeling them crinkle and tear a little since they were so delicate. The love letters between Princess Tosca and General Haruma, the founders of our nation. That's the true Thyssen tree that they grew together. It still lives to show their endearing love and remind us that love truly is the greatest treasure. Xavier clenched his teeth hard as he crumpled up the letters and ripped a small tree out of its soil. "Oh, this is just great. You drag all of us all away and get most of us killed over—" Kitcha was starting to complain, but Xavier just tossed the tree into her face and lifted Athena, shooting her in the face while she staggered back from getting hit by the tree. As flames burst out of her skull, Higgs had to quickly slap out the fire that caused on his jacket. Xavier ignored this, though, and reached down, squeezing the Xeno aristocrat by the throat and yanking him into the air. "Say that again?" Xavier growled. Love is our greatest treasure." Xavier squeezed hard, crushing the Xeno's throat and dropping him to the ground. As the Xeno choked and gasped on the air, Xavier quickly shot the other prisoners in the head with Athena. For a moment, him and the remainder of the team stood there in silence. Freaking done with Xeno treasures. Human treasures from now on only. He growled and began to limp back to where they'd come from, and his anger faded and was replaced with exhaustion. The others hesitated and then moved to follow. Captain Xavier Blood-Eyed Tetch, second most wanted pirate in the galaxy, sighed heavily as he tucked Athena and Aphrodite back into the holsters before reaching up to scratch his beard. "So, we're all done with the mutiny, right? Between that and those nightmare fuel creatures, we're down to what, 15 of us? I told you all, there'll be enough to go around." "We got a boss," Higgs said with a gulp. You know that I wasn't me, right, boss?" Xavier set his hand on Higgs's shoulder and with a squeeze. "I know, Higgs, I know." He looked around the old metal hull around them for a moment, the wreck of the JRS Kraken. Now here was the true human legend. He'd even heard the stories of when he was a kid. Fat with looted Dauntless campaign, and the Lost in the Solar Storm, and went down with all hands in an unknown system. Where here he was now in the hull. The only obstacle left was a cargo bay door in front of them now, and Sivan, Nassif's daughter, was working on the door controls to the side. The fact that Haran and the others had tried to betray him made him sad, but nothing could be done about it. This was also why he'd left most of the crew back on the ship. He'd lost 30 good sailors and fights today, but he still had more of this time. He was feeling very talkative this time, just a little worried. And then there was the click as the door controls were fixed and the door itself slid to the side. Xavier felt that usual hope rising within him, figuring there would be gems and gold and alien artifacts. When the door opened swiftly, he saw inside crates. Okay, that's all right. They were transporting cargo, so it made sense that they would be stored in crates. And there was a great deal of crates. He walked forward, having to limp since the servos in his cybernetic leg had seized up with all the alien guts clogging them up after his crew had fought through the bastards on the surface to make it into the ship. As he reached the first crate, he closed good eye for a moment, an unflinching cybernetic still observing the crate before. He opened up the other eye, and then opened up the crate. He looked inside for a moment, and then closed the lid, walking over quietly to the shorter crate while he sat on it heavily. The crew looked at him with worried faces. For Xenos, they really cared about their human captain. They got especially worried when Xavier began to cry. Higgs hesitantly opened up the lid of the crate. "What the?" he muttered softly and pulled out one of the objects inside. A magazine. As he held it open, the page unfolded and then sideways. "Hey, look at that! It's an old porn mags!" Wait. Higgs pulled out the manifest off the side and began to read. "It's all vintage porn and stuff. Some of the first interspecies vids and pictures, too. Boss, this stuff is really valuable. This has recordings that we thought were lost to history. The right collector will pay for this stuff, seriously. I guess the valuable treasure that they had was history and, porn." Xavier just had his head in his hands, crying, "I just want gold coins and treasure. Is that too much to ask for?" He looked up for a moment, tears streaming down the sides of his face, over the scars and cuts, and into the beard, before he buried his face back in his hands. Dread Captain Xavier Blood-Eyed Tetch, the most wanted pirate in the galaxy, had to admit that the view from the surface of the planet was pretty spectacular. The rings and the bright moons in the sky made for one hell of a view. Plus the stars were as vivid and bright as he remembered them being as a kid. "Come on, Cap," he heard and sighed, pulled from his reprieve as he walked over to follow the others through the small grove of blue and gleaming white moon trees. Beautiful night out, and to be honest, he had fun so far. The riddles had gotten a bit trickier as they followed them across the planet, but he'd figured them out and one been good sport in pretending that he didn't notice the clues that his crews were dropping. When they came out of the grove, he saw the giant X on the ground in the gully that he had to keep himself from laughing and spoiling it. "Oh wow, Cap, look at that, an X marks the spot. Just like the old treasure map said. I told you we'd need shovels," Higgs said with a grin. Yeah, Higgs, good thing you brought them," Xavier said with a false smile. "But I got this one." He walked down to the gentle slope at the center of the X and switched modes for his cybernetic eye. He located the metal crate beneath the surface and then jammed his upgraded left arm down into the ground, gripping the top and yanking it free of the soil. Good thing the soil had been dug up pretty recently, so that it was nice and soft. When he saw the crate, he noticed the cooling units on the sides and snorted before setting it down. "Oh wow, boss! Look at that! A chest of buried treasure! Well, go on and open it." He glanced around and saw the happy and cheerful faces of his crew. He couldn't let them down, so he smiled and flipped the latch with a soft click and pulled the lid up. He didn't expect gold and gems and alien artifacts, but inside there were indeed glittery gold coins, illuminated by the light on the top of the crate that made them shine more clearly in the night. "Wow, look at that! Ancient gold coins from Earth, boss." Xavier picked one of the coins up and peeled back the wrapper, biting into the chocolate inside. He actually nodded at the taste and chewed slowly before swallowing. "What?" Higgs asked, now obviously confused. "They're chocolate, Higgs. You bought this crate from Dash Trawler, yeah? They love chocolate. To them, this really was worth whatever you thought you were paying for a crate of ancient gold coins. Didn't you wonder why you kept it refrigerated?" Higgs' shoulders slumped, and Xavier noticed the forlorn look on the other Xenos. "Hey now, don't look so sad. I had fun tonight. And look around." He waved to the gleaming trees around them and the rings of the moons in the sky. "Look at this wonderful spot you took me to. It's beautiful. When did you figure it out, boss?" Higgs asked. "When you brought me the map, Higgs." No one actually makes a treasure map on paper with riddles and clues like that, but it was a very nice gesture. Come here, guys, get some chocolate. It's good stuff. As his crew clustered around him, he hugged some of them to his sides and they began to laugh and smile at the whole situation. Well, boss, I guess you could say that the gracious treasure is fam. He stopped as Xavier jammed the barrel of Aphrodite up under his chin. Don't you dare freaking say it. Xavier growled, completely serious. The greatest treasure is gold and gems and alien artifacts. That's what I was going to say, boss. Higgs gasped out. Xavier pulled the gun back, holstering it, and the friend gulped down and rubbed his chin nervously. What I mean is the greatest treasure is family jewels of long-dead Space King I heard about. Xavier was quiet for several seconds. Did you really hear about? No, forget it. It's just eat the chocolate and go home. Xavier learned his lesson by this point. But what if Higgs really had... No, he was done. But maybe. End of story. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to support the channel or the author, all the stuff is down below. And as always, I hope that you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next story. Cheers.